Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll take a few minutes to allow others to log on and then we'll get things started.
Well, good afternoon. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you all to our 32nd webinar in the Coffee with series hosted by the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership at Seton Hall University. I'm Reggie Lewis, Executive Director of the Center, and it's great to greet all of you who've logged on today from places around the United States and abroad to take part in our conversation with the Joe Patrnchak, a leading voice in the world of human resources and impactful leadership. Of course, Joe is a returning guest to our webinar series, which is one of our more popular sessions as we unpack the challenges surrounding the hard work of transforming organizational culture. So you're all in for a treat. Before I provide a more formal intro of Joe, just a word about the series and the Greenleaf Center. The Coffee With series provides the center the chance to showcase the inspirational stories of servant leaders like Joe and the endless ways in which individuals, organizations, and society in general can be transformed by the power of servant leadership, a philosophy in which the leader first seeks to serve. And I assure you, Joe will not disappoint. For over 60 years, the Greenleaf Center has worked to promote the awareness, understanding, and practice of servant leadership. In addition to the Coffee With series, other core programs include the Greenleaf Scholars Program, which funds researchers whose work promotes the efficacy and impact of servant leadership. Our virtual courses on the everyday principles of servant leadership are also available. And through our outside engagements, we proudly work closely with organizational partners as they implement the practice of servant leadership throughout their workplace culture. Before introducing our guests, I'd be remiss in not acknowledging the generous sponsorship of the Center's 2025 Coffee with Webinar series, the Terrell Fund. The Terrell Fund is a foundation that serves children and families in New Jersey and Vermont. The fund works collaboratively across sectors to make an impact in issue areas including early childhood education, K-12 education, the arts, family support, and more. Thank you, thank you, thank you to our friends at the Terrell Fund. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. It is indeed my honor to formally introduce and welcome back today's guest, Mr. Joseph M. Patrnchak. Since 2014, Joe has been the head of Green Summit Partners, LLC, a prestigious consulting practice dedicated to helping organizations to bring out their best in people. Joe brings a wealth of experience to this role. Prior to establishing Green Summit, he served as the Chief Human Resources Officer at the Cleveland Clinic, helping to create a culture in which all staff are considered caregivers. Joe essentially led a process of transforming the workplace culture of one of the largest medical facilities in the world to one in which everyone, and I do mean everyone, is expected to deliver passionate care regardless of their title or position or where you find them in the org chart. That includes receptionists, technicians, housekeeping staff, nurses, and of course, doctors. This work has been recognized at the local, regional, and national, I dare say, international level. Before joining the Cleveland Clinic in 2007, Joe served as Chief HR Officer and Senior Vice President at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. He also served as Vice President of Human Resources for HP Compact Digital, where he led the HR unit for the 4.5 billion global customer services division. And I didn't make an error there. That's 4.5 billion, as Joe would remind me. Joe is a scholar athlete holding the BA in sociology from Northwestern University. He also holds a Master of Science in Human Resources Management and Organizational Development from American University. And he's a graduate of the Advanced Executive Program at Northwestern University's Kellogg School and the International Management Program at INSEAD Fontainebleau, France. An author of several articles and books on HR and servant leadership, Joe remains among the most prominent thought leaders on these subjects today. But of all the designations, we at the center are most proud of the fact that Joe is a past chair of our board of trustees and remains, at least for the time being, on the board of the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership. Joe, are you ready? Do you have a cup of piping hot Boston coffee up there? Good to see you.
Got some water, but I just want to. Who is that guy?
Well, welcome back. Again, we've gotten a number of letters and emails from friends of the center asking us to ensure that this day would not be changed or postponed. So it's great to see you. Before we jump into a bit of an overview about the amazing work at the Cleveland Clinic, I just want to ask a few questions about uh, the Joe, the Joe of the early days, the formative days of Joe. And I know that you grew up in the Midwest, but help our audience to understand exactly where you grew up.
Well, I'm originally from Northeast Ohio, the Warren Youngstown area. If anybody's familiar with that area, it used to be called the Steel Valley because there was a line with steel mills along the Mahoning River. It's now the Rust Valley, called the Rust Valley because all those mills are gone. But I grew up in an ethnic home. My last name gives me away. Uh, and I have an identical twin brother, and he and I were fortunate enough to get football scholarship to Northwestern, and we were defensive co-captains there, and it was a great experience. So
Outstanding. Now, you've given me my nice segue to the second question about the early days of Joe Patrnchak and that twin, so Joe and company. And the team here, these youngsters, they do sort of CIA type research on all of our guests, and we've uncovered some things about you and the twin as we talk to some of your former neighbors. So anything you want to share about these early days of mischief involving your twin?
women can always tell who's who. You know, that we've tried that. You know, it never worked. Okay, because women viewed little details that men don't don't recall. Okay, but so we never really tried that very much. We tried it as a joke once, it didn't work. So we says, we have to give up on this tack. But
Could the teachers tell you apart? That's one of the main things, though. Could or
the
were you
teachers,
all
the teachers, the teachers were good at that.
okay?
They noticed little things as well, and so it was a great place to grow up. It was definitely a blue collar environment. Learned a lot about hard work and the value of hard work, and a lot from my relatives. I think my father only went to the ninth grade. Uh,
Oh,
I kept asking him, "Did you ever graduate from the ninth grade,
okay,
or did you just go to the ninth grade?"
okay.
He said, I went to that. I never did get an answer out of it. I went to the ninth grade. I'm not even sure if he finished the ninth grade, but he felt like it was really important for us not to be football fools when we went to college. He wanted us to really get good grades and do well. And we were academic all Big Ten as well. Okay. So I was really proud of that honor. It's hard to juggle all these balls up in the air when you're playing Big Ten football, but we're able to do it, with the help of some tutors, and so we were able to get through it in good shape.
Yeah, the amazing story, if not part of the American dream of how a proud dad who got to and maybe through the ninth grade got his boys to Northwestern University, which is amazing. And so, question related to that is, as you reflect back on your studies at Northwestern and the days of being on the football field, how did that prepare you for the career in HR with companies like Horizon and HB Compact Digital?
Well, I think one of the key things I learned throughout that experience was the power of perseverance. Um, when things start to feel dark and you don't feel like there's any light at the end of the tunnel, you just you have to learn to stay with it and persevere. And that, I think that was one of the biggest learnings I think that I had through that whole experience, was the power of perseverance. It helped me throughout my whole career. Uh, we'll get into some of the facts about progress later on, but things don't always work out
Right.
at first. Okay, not everybody believes they should be a servant leader. Uh, uh, I had people tell me at the Cleveland Clinic that I was taking 60,000 people down the wrong path.
No.
Had the CEO said, you got 6 months for this servant leader thing. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to pick a different model. So I said, we better start hustling and learn how to persevere real quick.
And indeed you did. And so let's jump into that, and if you could, we've got some slides that Gabby will pull up in a second. Just walk our audience through the magnitude of the place that you found when you walked in that door back in 2007, a massive environment. I mean, there's no workplace that's just ready to be invited to consider transformation. But this was a particularly challenging one. I'll let you share with our audience the environment you found. Of course, these numbers have shifted since 2014, but
Yeah,
Joe, go ahead.
yeah, there's more like almost 60,000 employees now. But at the
Speak up a little
time,
bit, Joe. Speak up just a tiny bit.
okay, at the time, there was uh, actually eight. The Cleveland Clinic is actually a hospital system of 8 regional hospitals with facilities in Canada, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. They view over 5 million patients a year, a lot of employees. And something unique about the Cleveland Clinic is that the physicians are employees. They're not contract workers. And so and they're on salary. So they're not on commission. So the reason for that is the goal is to have the physicians put the patient first in everything they do. So it's quite a large organization. It is international, Canada and the Middle East, and that's and continues to grow actually. When I arrived at the Cleveland Clinic, um, they had never done an employee survey, an engagement survey, and you don't need a survey from the Gallup Corporation to tell you if you have problems or not. If you're managing by walking around, you hear things and you discover dissatisfaction with people. Now, if you can deliver a great patient experience with having disengaged employees, you can write a book and make a lot of money. But it just
Huh.
just doesn't happen that way. Our first survey that we took, the ratio of engaged employees to disengaged employees was 2.8 to 1, and just to be in a neutral position, that had to be at least 4 to 1, 4 engaged employees to 1 disengaged. By the time we had finished our work, that ratio was at world-class levels of 9.6 to 1. And by the way, our patient experience mapped right along with that. So here are some of the things that we measured. Some of the key areas down the left side of the screen: communications, responsiveness, cleanliness, pain management. And we were only slightly above average in all these areas, uh, which is not a good place to be. When I worked in the computer industry, I didn't see anybody uh, die from hooking up a computer. But if you're working in the hospital, people can die. Okay, if people aren't committed to the mission and don't feel like they're part of the whole strategy. So this became a compelling reason. We now had some data and some information that told us that we needed to improve.
At the time, the clinic had the highest, what is known as acuity level of any hospital in the United States, which means that the sickest people in the world were making their way to the Cleveland Clinic.
Yeah.
And amazingly, and we're talking about significant procedures, as you know, right? So kidney transplants, open heart surgery, a whole range of things in which, you only want the best working on you if you're unfortunate enough to need such a procedure. And 99% of those patients who came for those complicated procedures actually were they went home, which so they didn't die on the table. So that was something that you found as a part of this enormous reputation, well deserved. Yet there were two other relatively unknown facts about the place, and you've hit on some of this already. In 2008, employees were certainly not engaged, and patients during the same time frame were often highly, highly dissatisfied with the care experience. So glad to get out of the surgery and wake up and realize I made it. But the overall patient care experience or bedside manner was wanting. How and where did you begin to chip away at both of these massive challenges?
That's a very interesting question because uh, some of the dialogue when I first got there went like this with the doctors. Geez, you know what? The sickest patients in the world come here. We save their lives. What more do they want? They go home. For many years, the Cleveland Clinic was known as the heart hospital. Okay,
Mm.
because you just mentioned, and so it was like, so what do they want? What more do they want? You know, we helped them. They went home, and it wasn't until the government started measuring the patient satisfaction uh, that it became the Cleveland Clinic got serious about improving that. And you can't have a highly engaged patients positive experience with disengaged employees. As I mentioned earlier, someone can make a lot of money if they can figure out how to do that. So it just doesn't. Disengaged employees are not going to uh, go that extra mile to make sure that the patient is well taken care for.
Absolutely. And then you've got, at the time, you're the guy who brought you in, the chief executive officer. He initially commits to 6 months, but he's definitely a champion for
Yes,
sure. He was highly supportive. But other members of that cabinet, because you were a part of that team, did not share that same level of enthusiasm. In fact, the thing that a number of our guests who join us today would like to know more about is how did you create buy-in with these key colleagues in the cabinet who you needed? Like you can't do what you've done or managed to do without having the chief nursing officer, the chief operating officer, and yet the CNO or COO at that time, they were like some of those doctors, like, yeah, Joe, what more do you want?
yeah.
How'd you chip away at that?
Again, it came back to data and information. um, the the government, as I mentioned, was now basing reimbursements not only on clinical outcomes, all right, but the patient experience. And so there are millions of dollars tied up at risk, okay, if the patient experience scores, the HCAP scores, came in low. So
And
we
just
had,
help our audience understand. I know that the acronym has changed, but at the time, that new measurement, that process of gauging patient satisfaction, among other things, long acronym HCA, HPS, whatever. But we don't need to tell people what all that meant. But but what was the essential purpose of this new mechanism, not just for Cleveland, but for all of the medical
yeah,
facilities?
yeah. Anybody that takes government funds must allow the government to come in and measure the patient satisfaction. And they run the survey themselves. So it's not your survey, it's the government survey. And they base reimbursements based on that because they want to see improvement.
Yeah, so that's a heck of an incentive to that chief operating officer.
It sure is. Would you believe that um, there was even resistance there? Okay. It's like there's a there's a change formula out there that people may be familiar with. No change starts without some level of dissatisfaction. Think about your personal life, a change you may have made. Okay, it had to be you start with some level of dissatisfaction with your current state, but that's not enough. You have to have a spot on the wall, a vision of where you want to go, and then have some practical first steps that will lead you to that spot. Right, and so I been a part of large change in prior organizations. And when I got there, I employed this. It says, so look, folks, here's a, if this is not enough dissatisfaction, then what possibly could be? We're in the bottom 40th percentile of the government's measurements of these, right? It's going to affect our reimbursements. We just ran a survey, an engagement survey. We're in the bottom quartile of all that, okay? What more dissatisfaction do you need to start doing something in the right to take some next steps? And uh, I know how to get the engagement scores up. Okay, but it wouldn't be a lasting change unless we had a new leadership model, and that leadership model needed to be commanding. It needed to be servant leadership.
Right. And not command and control, right?
Exactly. If
Which which
anybody
was
here's
which was the
if
comfort
anybody
zone.
now there's certain environments where command and control works. Anybody on this call ever been in the military? I mean, you learn how to follow orders or people can die.
That's right.
Okay, all right. I played 4 years of Big Ten football. We didn't do consensus management in the huddle when we are trying to decide on what kind of play to run. Okay, the coach calls a play, you kind of run the line up and run the play with a few audibles, and that's it, right? But if it's the only form of leadership you're using,
Mm,
it creates fear.
mm, mm,
And when people are fearful, they shut down, and
mm.
they're not going to give you their creativity, the innovation, and their ideas because God forbid, if that idea is different from the
Yeah.
leader, okay, there could be a price to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get a bit more into some of those specifics around implementation. Um, we're talking about adopting new skills and core competencies. And I know you structured a series of trainings. Everybody went through something, but then at least 3,000 plus of the sort of higher level leaders throughout the organization went through some specific trainings to nurture their awareness around the value of things like listening, empathy, building teams, and creating a sense of community. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Yes, and I'll connect another point to this, because it was part of the organizational training that we went through. Right? When I was really fortunate to work for this great CEO, Dr. Toby Cosgrove, who was one of the leading heart surgeons for many years, 35 years actually. And so he asked me after just a couple of months there, he goes, Joe, what do you see? Even walking around talking to people, what do you see? And I said, well, so doctor, language is a very important piece of the culture. It, and it's loaded with values and beliefs. Okay. Okay, Joe. So what's your point? He says, well, here's how we refer to people that worked at the Cleveland Clinic: the professional staff and the non-professional staff. Now, it's very difficult to be connected to the mission of the organization if you're a non-something.
Right.
So, well, what's your solution? I got a group of people together, and we talked about this, and I think we should rename everybody as their caregiver, because in the services business that I worked in, there is no such thing as a back office employee. Okay, everybody is either serving the customer immediately or serving somebody else who is, and it creates a culture of service. And it creates a culture of a great experience. So there's no back office in great service organizations. So I think everybody should be called a caregiver, and this group of people, like, we came together to determine this, and he liked it. He liked it.
And that's everybody from so people in billing to
Yes,
the valet to
right. We took
uh
43,000 people over through a
wow,
9 month period, with cross-functional groups and whatever, doctors, nurses, everybody. And we all talked about how we were a caregiver at the Cleveland Clinic,
amazing,
no matter what job that we had. And that was a big intervention that actually got this moving forward. Because
amazing.
it's one thing to just say, well, everybody's a caregiver now, okay, by name. But unless you take people offline and talk about how their work impacts the patient or the customer, uh, just changing a name isn't enough.
What were some of the other incentives you all built in? I know employee recognition was a big deal, helping people to feel good about, you know, the value of their work. Say more about that.
We started a program called Caregiver Celebrations, and we asked patients to nominate people who they thought delivered great experience, a great experience. And we had supervisors do the same thing, but the feedback that we had from patients when we asked them was very, very, very telling. Okay, and we told them about the caregiver celebration, how they could be nominated for something and they'd be recognized amongst their peers. Recognition in a healthcare environment, I think in most environments, recognition uh, from their peers goes a lot more than just money. It means a lot more than just money. And so when peers get together and they refer somebody or recognize people, when the customer or the patient recognizes someone, um, it carries a lot more weight and feels a lot more significant. So
Absolutely.
the caregiver celebration was something that really brought everything together.
Fantastic. Um, in a minute, I've got to shift to allow our audience to weigh in with their questions. But um, one of the things that our frequent guests of the series wanted me to convey to you or inquire about is this whole notion of workplace toxicity and how one moves to create a more welcoming and affirming environment. And that's got to be particularly tough in a place known for burnout, which is, in the medical profession. Not just in terms of factoring the Cleveland experience, but all of the prior roles you've been in and the work you're doing today at Green Summit. Can you just say a bit more about how folk can get their arms around workplace toxicity and give people a little bit of hope that it is possible to, obviously, Cleveland Clinic is one major example, but it's possible to make that shift in really just any sector. Can you say something about that?
Toxicity is closely related to fatigue.
Uh,
This has been my experience. And I will say, particularly in a healthcare environment, medical environment, you need to get people to take care of themselves. Uh, because you can't take care of the patient unless you take care of yourself. Okay. And so we found ways to give people permission to take time off. A lot of employees, they don't use their vacation. They get paid for it if they don't use it. But that's not that doesn't allow someone to uh, get rid of their fatigue and be less toxic. So we made it very important. We weren't gonna. If you didn't use the vacation, you're gonna lose it.
okay.
Okay.
You use it or lose it, literally.
Exactly.
Mm.
Okay. And so that got people, first of all, the heads up that we cared about them. We cared about them, and we cared about uh, their feeling of the patients as well. All right. So that was a big step forward.
Excellent. As we shift, let's pull up one more uh, very amazing graft, if you will, um, because you achieved those results. So you weren't dismissed after 6 months. Just say something about this all paying off, because sometimes we don't talk enough about the models that are out there. So this so-called experiment at the Cleveland Clinic around servant leadership implementation produced considerable results. And so if you would say something about where you began in '08 and where you ended up in 2013.
Sure. So the red line is, again, this is the government survey that the government factors in when they base their reimbursements on the patient satisfaction. And as you can see, we were quite low. Okay, maybe 22% in terms of satisfaction um, from the patient satisfaction. But the blue line tracks how the employee engagement took off because of the work that we were doing, and how that blue line it just pulled the whole HCAP scores right along with it. And as I mentioned, we were working at world-class levels. So again, this reinforces this thought is that unless you care about the employees, unless they're engaged, they're not gonna do great things for the customer or for the patient.
Is there anything you do differently today? You can lower that, Gabby.
uh, as you look back on this, there's not a whole lot I would think that I would do differently. I think one of the things that I was smart enough to do was to uh, engage with as many doctors as I could because it's a physician-led organization. Okay. And I think if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably spend more time with the doctors,
Okay.
doing some things like rounding, just connecting with some of the doctors and say, hey, look, I'm just going to, when I know you do rounds every day. I like to go with you.
Mhm.
I did some of that, but probably not enough. If I had, that would have gave me a little more credibility at the start. Probably would have made it easier to have this accepted.
You maybe would have gotten to buy-in a little faster, but nonetheless, uh, you were the architect of this major case study in transformation as a result of implementing servant leadership with fidelity. And that deserves to be showcased and highlighted. Too bad we don't have more time to keep talking about examples of your strategy. I've got to switch over to our esteemed project manager who will now lead us through the Q&A portion of the program, Gabby Cooper.
Thank you, Reggie, and thank you, Joe, for being here with us today. I want to remind the audience that you can load questions into our Q&A chat feature on Zoom. But the first question we have is, Joe, can you speak about what you currently do with Green Summit and how you utilize the servant leadership principles and practices in that role?
Well, thank you. No, thank you for the question. I work with a lot of nonprofit organizations today.
Mhm.
And most of my nonprofit organizations run the gamut of religious organizations, uh, non nonprofit charity organizations.
Mhm.
And the reason I've decided to focus there is because uh, they don't have a lot of money. Okay, these nonprofits, they have very thin margins, most of them, and they can't afford to pay someone like me what I'm really worth. Okay, right? If I was charging a commercial customer, it would be a lot more, right?
Yeah.
But I found it to be so so gratifying, actually. Okay, to work with these smaller organizations all around the country. Okay, really. And so I decided that this would be my focus and my way of giving back to these because of how I've been so blessed, really, okay, to have these experiences.
And how do you use servant leadership in the work that you do with those organizations?
Most of these organizations have had little or no experience with any kind of uh, leadership development.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
Mhm.
and they're flying by the seat of their pants, and many of them just can't just welcome this. Okay, now not all. Okay,
Mhm.
a lot of people feel like they've been successful. Now this new model comes along. Why do I need to accept it? And so I have to remind them: have you managed by walking around it all lately?
Yeah.
Have you eavesdropped on some of these conversations?
Mhm.
Are there
Yeah.
people really happy? Are they really engaged as you think they are?
Mhm.
Or are people just telling you what you want to hear? When was the last time you did a survey of any sort where people are, can be
Mhm.
confidential? So I have to remind people that um, uh, that there's what's the dissatisfaction in their organization,
Yeah.
because the change stall starts with some dissatisfaction. Okay, and
Mhm.
so have you looked for it? Have you found it? Are you looking in the right places? And if you are, and your model works, then don't change it. All right. But if you do find out that people need to be supported more,
Mhm.
that people need you as a leader to put the organization first before themselves, all right, and put other people before you as the leader, then you
Mhm.
just might have enough there to work with.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. So our next question is, how much did you use the phrase servant leadership as the underpinning of the change you were proposing? I find that servant leadership resonates with good leaders initially, but then others don't have much sense of what it entails. So when you were at the Cleveland Clinic, were you saying the word servant leadership often and how you were addressing the changes that you were making?
Yes, I used the term quite a bit because it was so different from the
Yeah.
command and control leader. The Cleveland Clinic is a physician-led organization. That means the senior executives all have to be doctors.
Oh, wow.
The bylaws have to say that.
Yeah.
And so doctors are trained different differently
Yeah.
than other leaders. Okay, they're command and control leaders. All right, and they need something in the operating room. They need it. Okay, and
Yeah.
that's the way it is. Okay, all right. So, but when you're leading other people, again, that creates fear. All right. So I use the word servant leadership quite a bit, and the grounding of how different it was from the command and control type of leadership. By the way, I talked about both models. Okay.
Mhm.
Now
Yeah.
everybody thinks that servant leadership is a soft form of leadership.
We get that. We get that sometimes. The
You get that,
mushy
right?
servant leadership,
It's mushy,
caring.
it's
Yep.
soft, okay, right? But has anybody ever been served by having an easy goal?
Mhm.
Servant leaders are always raising the bar around excellence and challenging people to be better, challenging people to learn something. You know, how many of you have ever had a goal that you had no idea how to accomplish?
Mhm.
Okay, all of us had. That's probably many of us have had something like that. But so we had to go off and learn something. Put a little group together and say, "Hey, I got this task. Can we put a little group together to learn
Mhm.
about this? I don't have a clue on how to deal with this." And all of a sudden, you become somewhat of an expert, or certainly more knowledgeable about the challenge. So servant
Mhm.
leaders are always raising the bar and having people to go off and try to achieve more.
Certainly. So we get sometimes that people challenge and say that servant leadership doesn't enforce accountability. So how do you um, respond to that resistance about accountability and holding people accountable while also caring for them?
If you're going to put the organization first, you have to hold people accountable.
Hmm.
Okay, all right. And on top of that, if you don't hold people accountable, you're not raising the bar on them either. So it's a
Yeah.
lose-lose situation.
Hmm.
Okay, you're actually serving them and you're serving the organization by holding them more accountable than they've ever been before.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. So, besides the graph that we saw with the amazing improvement on survey scores, when did you realize that the transformation was starting to set in as in the clinic? Do you have a specific story of something you saw or something you overheard that made you realize this is working?
It actually, 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 there's a funny instance that I had with
Mhm.
this. Um, this is when I had first started. I was on a house hunting trip, and I wasn't even formally at the clinic. And the CEO, we would have a lot of meetings at 7 o'clock in the morning. The doctors start
Mhm.
early, so
Yeah.
the team meetings, the executive meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning,
Mhm.
which I could never get changed, But the doctors start at 7. Joe, you got to start at 7. Okay,
Yep.
all right. So I'm there on the house hunting trip, and the CEO puts my picture up on the screen because we're in an auditorium, like, all right,
Mhm.
okay, and uh, as in, if anybody's ever been in a meeting in an auditorium, there's nobody down in the front rows.
Mhm.
Everybody's in the back row. Okay, so the CEO puts my picture up. And I said, what did I say? I said to one of the doctors, well, it looks like we don't have assigned seats here because nobody's sitting past this back row.
Mhm.
And the guy goes, well, they sh- they sh- they should, they treat us like children around here, and okay. So
Oh, wow.
so so then he puts my picture up, okay,
Mhm.
okay, and the lights come on, and the doctor turns to me and goes, Joe, welcome to the Cleveland Clinic. Now, did I mention my name to you? And I said, no, doctor, you didn't. He goes, great. Have a nice day. Okay. Okay. he
So
leaves, and then I never saw him again. All right.
mhm,
So again, this is like feeds into this managing by walking around and learning
mhm.
things. Okay. And uh, seeing that, you know, where's the area of improvement.
Yeah, certainly. Okay. So we all know that it's hard to stay the course when you're a part of creating deep institutional change. During those days, where did you find encouragement to keep going? What inspired you?
What inspired me was the early wins,
Mhm,
and you have to look for those. And oh, by the way, you have to recognize those and tell people about it, tell others about those early wins, right? And so as you're part of an executive team leading this change, you have to publicize these early wins because it creates momentum. And if you
mhm,
don't have momentum and keep this at the forefront of your goals and celebrate these wins, you're going to slip back because change is hard. It,
mhm.
it does take time,
Yeah,
and so you have to celebrate the victories that you have along the way.
certainly. Well, thank you so much, Joe. That's all the questions we have for today. For those that have logged on, I have a few brief announcements before we log off. So I'd like to invite all of you to our next Coffee with webinar. This is a special one titled Emerging Voices for Change with the Mayor of Terre Haute, Indiana, Brandon Sackbun. You can join us on October 2nd to discuss and explore insights on government that listens, understands, and responds. Next, I'd like to invite all of you to the fourth annual Hall of Fame this October 29th at Seton Hall University. This is a ceremony that honors local and national servant leaders who have made an impact in their community. And if you'd like to meet the honorees, become a sponsor, purchase an ad, or reserve your seat, you can go to greenleaf.org and all the information is linked on our homepage. If you would like to stay connected with the Greenleaf Center, you can follow us on these three platforms. And lastly, if you could take a brief moment to take the Zoom survey that will pop up after the webinar closes, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. So thank you so much to all who attended, and thank you, Joe. We had a great time today.
We had a great time with you, Joe, as usual. So thank you for coming back. I guess this is the fifth or sixth appearance as a part of the Coffee with series, and also because Joe is a modest guy, it's important for our audience to know that Joe Patrnchak is among the 2024 inductees
Mhm.
for the Servant Leader Hall of Fame. We had a chance to finally honor an icon in this movement. So thank you, Joe, for all that you do, and certainly joining us again today to share the amazing story about the Cleveland Clinic's transformation through the leveraging of servant leadership. So we are always grateful to you and good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Joe.
Take
Okay.
care.
Bye now.